and hopefully in the next hour, we'll get a chance to get a journey, look at a journey of what it takes to be a lawyer, whether you want to be a lawyer. And I plan to present for about 45 minutes, give or take, and we'll have time for questions and answers towards the end. And so we will start off with trying to answer three different questions. One is, why would you want to become a lawyer? And the second question is, how can you become a lawyer? And the third question is, what do lawyers actually do? And so that's the outline. We'll spend about 15 minutes on each of these three questions. And if there's a question that comes to your mind during this presentation, please write it in the chat or jot it down, and you're welcome to ask towards the end, and I'll answer questions towards the end of the presentation. So why do people want to become lawyers? There's many reasons. Three common ones are for empowerment, and second is for justice, to do the right thing and to help people. And the third, of course, is as a profession, to earn money. And so one famous quote from former President Abraham Lincoln is that a lawyer's time and advice are his stock and trade. And we'll address that importance of that quote a little bit later on when we talk about what a lawyer does. So empowerment, what do we mean by empowerment? One of the things that drives people to want to go to law school or to become a lawyer is to understand the rules, to understand the system, to know how things work, what are the limits, what are the do's and don'ts, what are the consequences or potential risks or liabilities that people or corporations or governments face. And so the rules that run our society are local and national rules and international rules, and being able to give advice, knowing the rules for yourself as a personal means of empowerment, and also as a means of professional empowerment to be able to advise on an organizational or an institutional level, be able to tell people how the rules work, what are the risks from a legal perspective. And of course, being able to solve problems. There's a challenge in being a lawyer, being able to take complex facts, looking at rules, and giving an analysis and advice based on those complex rules and unique circumstances. And so one of the things that law students experience is a change in how they think through problems. There's really a training. Law school is really a training ground on how to think differently, to problem solve like a lawyer. And you'll see on the right side of the screen there is something that you learn in the first year of law school, which is the IRAC method, or the issue, rule, application, and conclusion. And it's really an outline for how a lot of written products lawyers write. Is first, number one, focusing on what the issue is, defining the question in a very brief one-sentence statement. What is the issue? Number two, looking at what is the rule. No guesswork involved, directly to the primary source, either constitution, case law, statute, whatever precedent is binding and mandatory or even advisory. And so what is the rule is the second step to that problem-solving method. And the third is application. You look at, now that you know what the rules are, you apply the rule to your facts, to your circumstance, to your case. And so you can advise and give a final conclusion to your client. Second reason why people go to law school and become lawyers is for justice. It's to try to help people, to try to fix wrongs. This is a quote from Martin Luther King, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so when people are motivated by a sense of justice, that can take on many different forms. Justice is often a balancing act between different harms between two parties or two individuals, and how those wrongs can be righted or prevented is a motivation for many people. And sometimes it's deeply personal. Sometimes people have experienced or witnessed, either themselves or their family, some type of injustice, or they just have educated themselves and see a need and a purpose in trying to fix certain types of harms. The word wrong, you learn early on in law school, is defined as, it's a Latin word for tort, and that tort is any kind of harm, any kind of injury that a person faces, and how that can be fixed is really one of the main purposes of the law. And it's not just for individuals. Of course, there are civil rights and helping people to who are wronged in their liberty or their property or their personal injury, or even their reputation was harmed. That's one way of helping people, but also supporting institutions that are that have good purposes, that have charitable purposes, whether it's a nonprofit organization or a religious organization or even a government agency, for example, consumer protection agency. So understanding the rules and being a lawyer is one way to support institutions that do good work and help to establish justice. And the third reason, of course, is money. People become lawyers to earn a living, to make money. And so to help understand that and know exactly what that entails, it's important to know who is paying, who pays the lawyer. Usually it's a client, someone who has hired and paid for the lawyer to fix a problem for them, or to file a lawsuit, or to defend against a lawsuit. Sometimes it's if it's, for example, a nonprofit organization that has hired a lawyer, really the person that's paying the salary would be donors, someone who believes in a cause, and they pay the organization. The organization hires the lawyers. So it would be donors' money. And so, and the third option is there's a lot of government lawyers. In the United States, there's lots of lawyers that work for local, state, and federal government bodies and agencies and departments. And those lawyers, of course, are paid by taxpayers for the role that they serve in society. And so, what are the lawyers being paid for? Well, going back to that quote from Abraham Lincoln, they're being paid for their time and for their advice. Having someone that knows the rules and can help guide and advise governments and clients and nonprofits on what's the best strategy can really be a valuable contribution. If you think of the value of good advice, that instead of making a decision that is harmful, that can cause a lot of financial loss, for example, or even personal injury, is very valuable. Having a lawyer that can tell, for example, an amusement park that they need to inspect their rides every year to avoid liability, that can save lives. It can also, of course, save lots of money. And so having the right type of legal advice for those questions is valuable, and clients will pay money to get guidance on those issues. And the third issue I think that is helpful to understand with lawyers and how they earn money is how they get paid exactly. What's the technicality? What's the arrangement? And so often you'll hear the term retainer, which is like an upfront payment, for example, $5,000 or $10,000 that a lawyer or a firm earns over time, usually at an hourly rate. And so they're being paid for their time, and lawyers have to keep track of their time because the clients want to know where their money went. They have to have timesheets, and they record. It's often in 3-minute increments that I spent 12 minutes or however long sending an email, or on a phone call, or writing a memo, a motion. And so those fee arrangements can also be a fixed fee, it can be a contingency fee. A fixed fee is like a specific set number that I will take your case. It's going to be $10,000. Even if it takes me more time, I'm not going to charge you any more, for example. Contingency fee is what personal injury lawyers often are allowed to use, which is where they don't charge you any money at all unless they win the case. And if they do, they get a percentage of whatever the settlement or the judgment is. And that's often not allowed for certain types of lawyers. But those are the different ways that lawyers can get paid through some type of a contract or a free fee agreement. So let's talk numbers before we move on to some of the mechanics on how to become a lawyer. So if money is your motivation on becoming a lawyer, these are some statistics, just comparative to a few other professions. These numbers are from the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics. There's a few links here, and I'll be happy to share this presentation with anyone who's interested. So in comparison to other professions, some of them require postgraduate after college degrees. Some do not. And these are just median numbers, so it certainly doesn't reflect what an entry-level job would be out of law school, for example, without experience. So that can fluctuate, and the type of law can also determine salary. But those are just some statistics for comparison purposes. So let's talk about our second topic for today, which is how do you become a lawyer? So it starts with going to law school. How do you get into law school? First, you need a college degree. You need an undergraduate degree. What you major in college usually does not matter. A lot of students pick what they call soft sciences, whether political science or public policy or business. Some students would choose something that's more in their technical interests, for example, accounting or finance or biology or engineering. Any college major can help you get into law school. In fact, some of the less common routes, for example, a science, or we call them hard science degree, would make you stand out, and it can open up opportunities later on in different types of law, like intellectual property law. Second, you need to take the LSAT. Most law schools require it. Usually it's taken in the junior year, maybe the senior year, summer before senior year of college. And it's different than the SAT. It doesn't have math on it. It's mostly logic, reasoning, being able to take a complex set of facts, to read through large paragraphs and understand different scenarios and the gist of the arguments that are being made. And there's a writing section. And the LSAT, which is the law school admission test, is administered by an organization called LSAC, which is a nonprofit organization similar to College Board. And so you also want to look at, once you've got your degree or working on your degree and you've taken your LSAT, you need to start researching which law school you want to go to. And you want to look for a law school that is accredited. There's an organization called the American Bar Association, or the ABA. And you're going to want to go to a law school that is ABA accredited, because many state bar associations may require that. And you want to look at the cost. Tuition for law school is about 3 years if you do it full time. And the cost depends, of course, on whether you're in state or out of state, whether it's a private or a public institution. But nowadays it can range from 20,000 to maybe 70,000 per year. And of course, there are potential for scholarships, and many people take student loans. So there is certainly a cost factor in determining whether what law school to choose. Location is also very important, and that's connected to the network that you develop. Where you go to law school can help you get a job afterwards. The local area where you're practicing, people will recognize and maybe have a connection based on the law school that you went to. One question people may often wonder is, does the name of the law school matter? Is it important to go to an Ivy League or a top tier law school? Certainly helpful. There's many doors that would be open, whether it's through clerkships with judges or in big law firms. Having a highly ranked law school certainly is a major boost in helping your career as a lawyer. But ultimately, once you're in the legal field, like any other profession, your reputation follows you, and you build your professional experience based on your work. The question then also becomes, do you want to get more than just a law degree? Some people go for a dual degree. Some law schools will even offer it, whether it's in conjunction with another graduate program. For example, a common path is getting a JD, which is a Juris Doctorate. It's the degree that you earn at the end of law school. In addition to that, getting an LLM, which is a Master's of Law, or even a MBA, Master's in Business, or Public Administration, or even medical school. So any combination of professional degrees can help people in their profession. When I was in law school, I had one of my classmates had been a practicing doctor for over a decade and came to law school to further his career. And you can choose to go to law school part-time or full-time. If you do it part-time, it's usually done in about 4 years. It might involve night classes if you're working during the daytime, and requires taking about 10 hours or about 2 or 3 classes per semester. How do you succeed in law school? What's law school like? So obviously there's going to class and attending lectures, and usually there's a lot of reading that is assigned to law students. Professors will give you an outline in the beginning, and it'll have the expectations. It usually involves reading hundreds of pages on a weekly basis between all the different courses. And then you show up to class, and there's something famous called the Socratic method, which to help make the point, I'm going to use the Socratic method now to get some audience participation. So imagine you're going to class, and let's see. I see that there is Zahra Latif on here. Can we have Zahra either unmute or type in the chat and answer this question for me? What constitutional amendment protects people in the United States against unreasonable searches and seizures? Which constitution protects people from unreasonable searches and seizures? So while we're waiting for that response to come in, that's just a demonstration of what law school professors will do often as a way to quiz and teach students, is to call out students based on the reading that you've done and say, oh, can you summarize this case for us? Or how do you answer this legal question? And you as the law student, that's fine. That's great, saying, she said, I'm not sure. So that's kind of the experience that you have in a law school class with many professors who use what's known as the Socratic method. And they just kind of put you on the spot, and you have the classroom teaching each other through answering the professor's questions instead of just one-sided lecture.
Wait, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, which one is it, by the way? I'm just curious.
Absolutely. It's the Fourth Amendment.
The Fourth Amendment? All right, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. And so, see, he just used the method on me. So that, how do you get a good grade in law school classes? Surprisingly, and as a shocking, it's almost a culture shock, many classes in law school, they're graded based on one final exam. So unlike what you might be used to in high school or even in college, where you have multiple tests, quizzes, homework assignments, bonus, opportunities. In many law school classes, you go through 2, 3, 4 months of classes, and then at the end of the semester, you have one exam. It's usually a long written exam where you have to write a lot for several hours, answering multiple questions, and the teacher will then read your written work and gauge and grade you based on your proficiency, and they have their grading methods. But it's all one big exam at the end. Some will make it a smaller percentage, maybe 70%, and give, for example, a writing assignment that's also graded. But it's a big shock for law school that there's a lot of pressure on that final exam, and you kind of don't even know how you're doing in the class up until you get your grade at the end of the semester. Second thing about how to succeed in law school is to get active and participate in some of the different educational opportunities. So law review or law journals are they are educational publications. They're used as a source by people in the profession. They're published on the different legal research tools. And so it's a chance for a law student to find an interesting and an issue that they're interested in, and to thoroughly research it, and to write a very in-depth analysis and publication called an article. You write a law review article, and that article it's an academic paper, but it's published and it's then relied on often and cited by different sources, including by lawyers and judges, and it helps to shape the conversation and even impact laws. So it's a pretty cool and useful way to have law students contributing to the field on an academic level. And it's often cited in a resume and used as a means of showing proficiency in legal analysis and research. Another one is moot court, or also mock trial. Those are both competitions where you act as a lawyer. Moot court, you're arguing a case like an appellate lawyer. You research it. You stand up. You give your arguments, and you answer questions from judges. So it's a little different than a trial. It's more just on legal argument, the way you'd hear about it in the Supreme Court. There's no witnesses. There's no evidence being presented. It's just kind of legal argument. And so that, and of course, it starts off with a written brief that you write, and you have to defend your position. That's moot court. The second one is mock trial, which, as you can imagine, it's a trial, and you have to stand up, you have a case, you're given facts, you have to question witnesses, you have to make opening and closing arguments. A lot of fun. Can do it in law school as a team, and if you win, you move on to regional and national levels. Another thing you can put on your resume and gain experience. But aside from that, you get great opportunities for hands-on experience through internships, externships, clinics, and clerkships. Clerkships are with judges. Usually you do that after law school. But while you're in law school, in the summers between your years, you look for internships, and you try to work at either a law firm or a government agency or a nonprofit, somewhere you might want to get a job after law school. Ideally, you might want to or explore that field. And so you spend your summer at these internships. An externship is similar, except you do it for class credit, and it's during the school year. And clinics are usually run by the law schools themselves. It's usually in a specific type of field, like indigent defense clinic, or for people who are charged with crimes and don't have a lawyer, or people who are being kicked out of their homes and they don't have the money to hire a lawyer to fight their landlord. Those type of clinics are often supervised by a lawyer who's a professor, and you as a student, as a law student, can get hands-on experience working with clients and even going into courtrooms and filing documents and motions with supervision. While you're in law school, it's really important to develop your network, and that, of course, goes through, you do that while you're in these internships, but also your professors, attending events, volunteering and leading organizations in different areas of the law that you're interested in. meeting with alumni, maybe developing a mentor relationship with a lawyer. Those are very excellent ways and important ways to network and to help you get connected into the legal field after law school. Final point is law school is stressful, and so is practicing law. It's one of the professions that have higher rates of mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and so self-care and having a support network to help you through stressful moments in law school is important. Everyone who goes to law school will know a few people that despite the tuition, despite the sacrifice it takes, they don't make it. They quit, or they don't come back the next year, or so it can have a competitive edge to it, especially if grades are being graded on a curve and you only have a few 2 or 3 A's or 4 A's that are being given to the whole class, and so everyone's kind of vying for that top position. So the final section on how, before we get into the what practicing law is like, is how do you become a lawyer? You've got your undergraduate, your college degree, you've earned your law degree, you finished law school, you passed. That doesn't mean that you're a lawyer. It means you have a Juris Doctorate degree. You can put JD behind your name, but in order to become a practicing lawyer, you have to be licensed, and getting licensed means you have to be a member of a state bar. Every state has its own bar. They have their own requirements for admissions, but generally, number one, they require that you go to law school, usually ABA accredited law school. Some state bars will allow an alternative to law school. I haven't met any lawyers that have gone this route, but doing an apprenticeship or working hands-on experience with a lawyer for several years can potentially be a means of avoiding going to law school. The second requirement is doing the bar exam or passing the bar exam. As this picture here shows, Robin's excited because he finished law school, but don't get that excited because the bar exam is usually right after that, and it's usually pretty strenuous. You have to pick the state, so you may have went to law school in one state, but you actually want to practice in a different state, so you need to take the sit for the bar exam in the state that you want to practice. And some lawyers will sit for the bar exam in multiple states because they want to be licensed. For example, a common example is if you're in the New York area, you want to have a New Jersey and a New York license. Or if you're in the DC area, you may want to have a Maryland and Virginia and DC license. It opens up your ability to go into the courtrooms and practice in closely connected jurisdictions. You have to apply. The application is time consuming. It is very detailed. It costs money. Not $10, not $50. It's several $100s just for the application. And once you pass the bar and you've submitted all the application, there's still a period of time in which you have to pass your character and fitness. Character and fitness is kind of like a background check. They make sure that you're a responsible person, someone that clients can trust with their case, with their property, with their money. And I've seen and heard stories of lawyers not passing their character and fitness for things like excessive debt, having too much money on your credit cards might show you that you're responsible, or too many speeding tickets or other traffic infractions can show a disregard of the traffic laws, and so that can cause concern for a state bar who's trying to give admission to a client. That doesn't mean that if you have some blemish on your record, then you should just give up. We've all heard, or it's very common to have heard of stories of people who've been to prison, who've had felony convictions, reformed themselves, and have proven themselves responsible and become lawyers, even though they have a prior felony conviction. But of course, it's an uphill battle or a difficult path, but it doesn't close or make you ineligible. You just have to prove and show that you're fit. It's a self-regulating profession. There's no agency that shuts the door or takes your license away. It's groups of lawyers, and it's like a private almost like a club, but it's a professional licensing process. The fifth one, very briefly, is CLEs, which is continuing legal education. Once you become a member of a bar, you have to keep learning for the rest of your life. And the sixth one is you got to keep paying. You have to pay fees every year to every bar that you're a member of. So if you want to become a member of 10 or 15 state bars, that's going to be a lot of money. All right. On to our final section before we go to questions is what do lawyers do? And so we'll spend some time on this slide just kind of talking you through some of my personal experience and some of the general things that lawyers can do. So your impression of what a lawyer does, it might be influenced by what you've seen on TV or what you've read in a John Grisham book. But this bottom right picture here of a person sitting at a desk surrounded by paper is probably one of the most realistic expectations of what a day-to-day life of a lawyer looks like. There are lawyers that don't go to court or very, very rarely go to court. There are lawyers that very rarely speak with clients. And so it depends on the type of law that you're practicing, what your day-to-day looks like. But a lot of what the actual work involves is meeting with people, sitting down, talking to other people, whether it's a client or other attorneys or whichever field you're in might determine who you're meeting with, and then talking, advising, giving your opinion. A lot of dealing with a legal case involves investigation and research. And this, depending on your interest, can be really exciting and fun. So imagine you're almost like a detective, like a private investigator, and you have some injustice or some legal case that you're being tasked with representing and solving, and you have to go out and find out the truth. That's what investigation is. It's trying to find out what really happened or what is really happening. And so if you've seen lawyer movies, you may have seen lawyers going to investigate, for example, the effect of environmental problems. And if there's a government agency or a corporation that is polluting the water source, for example, or using chemicals that are harming environment and people. And so if you're a lawyer and you try to make those harms stop, you need to investigate it. You need to find reliable information and facts that can be brought into court and proven through testimony, through documents, through scientifically testable and provable facts. And so factual investigation is a part of what lawyers do. And I didn't speak much about my job, but I'm a criminal defense lawyer. And so I represent people who are charged with crimes and they cannot afford a lawyer. And so, for example, in a criminal case, it might involve going to the scene of where the incident occurred, whether it's in a street or in a house, or speaking to witnesses and finding, meeting with experts, whether it's doctors or DNA experts or fingerprint, reviewing fingerprint reports and pictures. So this type of investigation, and nowadays, because of the change in technology, and a lot of it's digital, you get a lot of digital discovery. Discovery is the word for basically information that lawyers get during a case. So when we get discovery, when we get our information, a lot of it is digital. It's PDFs, it's Excel sheets, it's Word documents, it's pictures, and now increasingly cell phone data. Especially in criminal cases, police, for example, will take someone's cell phone and they will do a forensic extraction of it, which, for example, an iPhone will have many dozen gigabytes of data on it. And so our job is to find what's relevant and helpful to our client in reviewing that type of investigation and that information. Research is similar, but it also includes legal research. And so that's kind of looking at what does the law say, reading the statute, reading the books, reading the laws on the books, reading cases, which is opinions from other judges, interpreting different cases, different facts. And so that's another way of trying to understand what happened, and what the law says about what happened in your case. And so just kind of moving along, reading and writing. So once you're you've developed your facts and you want to give an opinion, there's writing that's involved. And so that's could be something as simple as an email or a memo, or something more formal, like a motion or a brief that's filed in court. Negotiating and strategizing. A lot of time that lawyers spend is trying to settle or come to an agreement, because litigation, which is fighting in court or like a trial, is expensive and it's very time consuming. So many cases, whether it's civil or criminal, try to first explore a negotiation or a settlement, or in the criminal world, it's called a plea agreement, as a means of avoiding a full out argument in trial through litigation in court. So you spend time talking to the other party or representatives of the other party and negotiating a solution. And then strategizing, so talking to your client and seeing what's the best strategy. Is it better to settle? What's the risk of losing? What's the potential liability or harm? And finally, representing and advocating for your client in whatever forum that is. Usually it's in court or in a negotiation, and it could be done in writing, could be done in person. And again, that's another really, I guess, fun and creative way that you can fight for justice and fight for your client, is finding the best way to represent them and advocate and articulate their position, whether it's through audiovisual means and coming up with the best kind of picture that you can put in someone's mind, or finding the right words that help someone understand, or analogies that help someone understand the situation. So this is what lawyers spend their time doing. And personally, but because I'm a criminal defense lawyer, I spend a lot of time in court. In an average week, I'm usually in court at least 2, sometimes as many as 5 days a week. And I spend time in my office. I spend time at the jails where my clients often are, meeting and sitting and talking to them. Spend time on the phone and at my computer, sending emails and writing things. And sometimes out in the field, investigating and meeting with witnesses. And trials are rare, depending on the type of field that you're in. I don't want to give any statistics, but for example, the statistic I know from my field is about 2% of federal criminal cases go to trial. And so trial is rare. You might only go to trial maybe once a year, sometimes none. Sometimes it's 2 or 3. And so it depends on, what's going on with your cases. But that's just a big picture of what lawyers do day to day. And this final slide is just to give you an idea of the different types of lawyers there are. We talked about criminal lawyers. There's also basically everything that's not a criminal lawyer is a civil lawyer. So criminal means that the consequence can include taking someone's liberty, that they can go to jail. So some crime has to have been occurred, a misdemeanor or a felony. Felony is a serious crime. A misdemeanor is a less serious crime. But anything that's not a crime is considered civil law. So corporate lawyer, for example, can be someone that helps someone start a business, just filing paperwork. Sometimes they're called transactional lawyers. They can represent corporations in litigation. So civil litigation is a specialty of its own, going to trial in a civil lawsuit, lots of time and money and paper and work involved in that type of field. And then the other common one is family lawyers. They help people with different family disputes, whether it's a divorce or custody issues. Bankruptcy lawyers, when someone runs out of money, there's rules on which people that owe money get the money first, and whether the person has to pay or not, depending on who they owe a debt to. So that can get complicated, and a bankruptcy lawyer can help someone navigate a debt. And tax lawyers, of course, with tax liabilities. Immigration lawyers, if someone has pursuing some type of legal status or facing deportation, which is a very common need especially in minority communities in the United States. And a contract lawyer is similar to the corporate lawyer. A corporate lawyer actually is a reference to someone who works in-house, is what they call it. So someone that works directly. For example, Coca-Cola will hire lawyers directly, or they may retain a firm for if they want to get a lawyer that's not in-house. And so these are just some examples. Real estate lawyers help you buy a house. Employment lawyer will help you if you're fired, for example, and you're disputing or you're facing some discrimination at your work. And those are the different types of lawyers. And my final note before we go to questions is that you don't have to be a practicing lawyer. Some people choose to go to law school and they don't practice law at all, or they practice law and they decide to practice a different type. They do something else with their time and their experience that it doesn't involve going to courtrooms or practicing law, meaning giving legal advice. And so some of those examples can be someone that works for goes into politics, for example, or goes into media, journalism, or even law enforcement, or just business consulting, or working to teach, a professor, law professor, or some other type of educational role. So having a law degree or having experience as a lawyer can help you do different roles. Even, for example, for a doctor who has a law degree, they can help get into the more administrative roles and running the hospital. It just gives you an edge on knowing the system and the rules and being able to assess liability and structure how your profession or your entity does business. So that's my presentation. I see that there's a few questions here on the chat. I don't know if you want me to read them, Ibrahim, or do you want to read them to me?
I think I'll read them because I got some sent to me directly, so I think it's better if I do. Sure. But actually the first question is coming from me. So I wanted to ask, what type of lawyer are you?
I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I work as a public defender. So my employer is the federal government, and I represent people who are charged with federal crimes and they can't afford them.
All right. I think that this section of the presentation actually got a lot of questions, so we'll start with this one. So somebody asked what major would be good for an intellectual property lawyer.
Depends on the type of intellectual property you want to defend. If it's technological, for example, I worked on a lawsuit early on in my career that involved some of the big tech companies that you know of. And so having a computer science or an electric engineering degree would help with that type of intellectual property law. Or you might have some medical products, so having a biology degree would be helpful. There's also intellectual property that's could be a software, for example, an algorithm for artificial intelligence, the AI technology. Those you need a computer or software background.
Yeah, all right, thank you. Somebody else asked, can a lawyer be specialized in multiple fields of law?
You can, and typically lawyers will indicate in their profile or in their business, what type of cases they do. If you specialize in too many, then it's not really a specialty. But often you'll see, for example, a solo practitioner, which is someone who has their own small law firm. They kind of their own boss. They'll do a mix of cases. It could be family, it could be criminal, it could be immigration, and so you can specialize in more than one. You don't get licensed or you don't get a degree in one specific type of law. So it's a little bit more flexible than, for example, as a doctor, you probably wouldn't be an orthopedic surgeon and a cardiologist at the same time. That's probably unheard of. But with lawyers, you're more likely to find mixed specialty lawyers.
All right. Thank you. Somebody else was talking about that they missed when you were talking about family lawyers. So if you could like quickly go over what they do.
Sure. Yeah, family law is dealing with divorce. It's dealing with child custody disputes, which parent has access or custody of a child. And there's associated areas to family law. I may be missing some, but generally, for example, inheritance. If someone is to die, who gets their money? It's maybe related, but it's a different area of law. So family is usually just divorces, and custody is the typical.
All right, thank you. Somebody else was saying that they're in ninth grade right now, they're a freshman. So is there any advice on how I can start building my career?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, high school is not too early to start thinking of law school and becoming a lawyer. It's my advice to you would be to just read and educate yourself, and maybe shadow or try to find a lawyer that would be willing to kind of explain to you what the different options and different types of careers are. Maybe go and sit in court for a day or two to watch what lawyers do in a courtroom. Courtrooms are open public places. You may just need someone to drop you off and pick you up if you're old enough to be there alone. And then there's different programs that are geared directly towards high schoolers, whether it's by different bar associations, like the Houston Bar Association. If you're in Texas, if you're in Houston, but if you find a program that's directed towards high school students, that can be helpful. We have in the federal court a program called Emerge that has some high school students that come and spend time over the summer listening to lectures and interviewing different lawyers in different fields at firms and in courtrooms. And I think if you're in Houston, there's the Harris County, the county attorney's office has a program that's currently, I think, for this summer, that's geared directly towards high school students that you can apply and get you some exposure. So there are opportunities for you even if you're in high school.
All right. Thank you. The same person asked, are there any books related to law? And I think that's the last question for this section. There are also like other questions about other things too. But yeah, the
Okay.
question is, yeah, any books related to law?
Yes, there's lots of books related to law. In law school, you have to buy a textbook for each different type of subject. But if you're in high school or in college, you may want to get like an overview outline book of the different areas of law. Or if you haven't taken the LSAT, you might want to start with getting an LSAT study book.
All right. Yeah, speaking about that, I got another question is what is the LSAT out of, and what type of score would you need to get into a good law school?
It's been a while since I applied to law school, so I don't want to misquote the numbers. But it's graded differently than the SAT, so it's not out of 1400. I think the maximum is 180. And so if you get like 170, that's a really good score, for example. And again, law schools aren't going to have a specific number that they cut off admission for, but they look at the LSAT, they look at your college transcript, grades. And they also look at the other important factors. Specifically with law school, they're looking for people that are passionate about public service. They're looking for people that are going to make their law school name, I guess, make them proud by what they do with their career. So if it's a public service type of job or a leadership, showing leadership skills while you're in college or high school, those are the type of extracurricular opportunities that you can really highlight in a personal statement and get letters of recommendation for to help you get into law school in addition to the LSAT and grades.
Somebody else is asking, my daughter is currently applying to college and aspires to be a criminal defense attorney. What course might she want to ensure that she takes to supports developing skills specific for that area of law? And what type of internships might she try to do as an undergraduate?
Sure. Criminal defense is a very interesting area of the law. And as a college student, you might want to take classes that deal with criminal justice, maybe criminal procedure, constitutional law. Those are the type of classes that are offered in college. And you can, even if you don't specialize in criminal justice or political science, and you want to go for example, an engineering degree, you can still add those type of courses as part of your college curriculum. And as far as internships for criminal defense specifically, public defender's office or a district attorney's office would be a great place to spend a summer. And they often do have internship opportunities that are open for college students.
Um, I will say there are a lot of questions. I don't know whether we can get to all of them, so I'll just pick some. So one of them was saying, is the bar exam the same type of stuff in every single state?
Bar exam is different. Every state has its own bar exam. Some are 2 days, some are 3 days. Sometimes you have to wear a suit to take the exam, but they're all different, except for a certain section called the multi-state bar exam. So there's a portion that's national and there's a portion that's state specific.
All right. Somebody else was asking, what's the difference between an attorney and a lawyer?
There's no difference, and they're interchangeable words.
So if you're like a lawyer, you're technically also an attorney and vice versa.
Correct.
All right. So I think that I see a question here talking about that. Can you give us more information about the structure of a typical lawyer's day, hours or overtime, work-life balance, for example? Can you also give more information on how students interested in going into law can gain in-depth shadowing experience?
Sure. Let me start with the shadowing experience. So, if you're in college and you know a lawyer, you might want to see if you can watch them at work, or ask to go to court with them if they go to court. Or you could work for them. I did that when I was in college. I spent about 2 years working as basically a clerk or a legal assistant for a small law firm that had 3 lawyers. And so it gave me some exposure to how a law office runs. And that was a job for me. It was a part-time job while I was in college. But there's other shadowing experiences. Just have to develop the network and find someone that's willing to mentor you maybe over the summer, and maybe in some support capacity so that it's actually supporting the work that they're doing. The first part of that question, can you remind me, Ibrahim?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, that question was a little bit long. So can you give us more information about the structure of a typical lawyer's day, like hours, overtime, and work-life balance?
Sure. Depends on who you work for. If it's a big firm, you should expect to be pushed more. They have a focus on billable hours. Sometimes they expect their associates to work long hours, maybe 60 hours a week, which is like, 10, 12-hour days, sometimes on the weekends. And you just have to set your own limits and know if you want to do that, if you want to eat dinner with your family or not, or if you want to spend time enjoying yourself on the weekend, or if you have a full commitment to your profession and you're willing to spend your free time also working. Um, and so some jobs are more reasonable and you can expect a 40-hour work week where you get to go home in a reasonable hour and don't have to work generally on the weekends. So it's possible. It's just the type depends on the type of limits you set for yourself and who your employer is that you have to make sure you're not being overworked.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. I think this is gonna be the last question, and then we can wrap it up. Because it's almost 2 p.m. in Central Time. So this question is saying we see many senators and congressmen have law backdrop, and what's the path forward to get into politics with the background of law?
Sure. I mean, as you know, you don't need a law degree to go into politics, but if you do, it's certainly helpful to help you serve on different, I guess, as a path, maybe serving on different committees or boards or advisory councils where they need someone that has knows the rules, like we talked about, understands how to read a law, because that's what politicians do. If they're in the legislative branch, they write laws and they pass and vote on laws. So being a lawyer is certainly helpful to understand how to write a law, how laws can conflict with each other. And it is common that politicians have